In a small village nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas, there lived a young woman named Kisa Gotami. Her life had been one of simple joys, filled with love and laughter. She had recently married and given birth to a beautiful son, a boy whose bright eyes and innocent smile filled her days with hope and happiness. Kisa Gotami's life seemed perfect as she embraced her new roles as a wife and mother. One day, however, tragedy struck. Her son, who had been the center of her world, suddenly fell ill. Despite Kisa Gotami's desperate attempts to nurse him back to health, he succumbed to the illness and passed away in her arms. Overwhelmed with grief, she refused to accept the reality of his death. She clung to his lifeless body, hoping beyond reason that he could be saved. Kisa Gotami, in her heartache and denial, began wandering the village, asking anyone and everyone for help. "Please, can you bring my son back to life?" she pleaded with the villagers. Many pitied her, but no one had the power to grant her wish. The villagers, knowing that nothing could be done, began to avoid her, whispering among themselves about her inability to accept her loss. One day, a wise elder in the village took pity on Kisa Gotami and offered her some advice. "Kisa," he said gently, "there is only one person who can help you. His name is the Buddha, and he is known for his great wisdom and compassion. Go to him, and perhaps he can give you the answer you seek." With renewed hope, Kisa Gotami set out to find the Buddha. She walked for days, carrying the small, lifeless body of her son in her arms. Her grief was palpable, and her heart heavy with sorrow, but she held on to the hope that the Buddha could restore her son to life. When she finally reached the Buddha, she fell at his feet, weeping. "Please, great teacher," she begged, "bring my son back to life. I cannot bear this pain any longer." The Buddha looked at her with deep compassion, understanding the depth of her suffering. After a moment of silence, he spoke softly, "Kisa Gotami, I will help you, but first, you must do something for me." Kisa Gotami, eager to do anything that might bring her son back, nodded fervently. "Tell me, great teacher, I will do anything you ask." The Buddha continued, "Go into the village and bring me a mustard seed from a household that has never experienced death. Once you bring me this seed, I will heal your son." Grateful for this task, Kisa Gotami immediately set out for the village. She went from door to door, asking for a mustard seed from homes where no one had ever died. At the first house she visited, the family was willing to give her the mustard seed. But when she asked if anyone in their family had ever experienced death, they replied, "Yes, we have lost loved ones." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami left and continued her search. At each house the story was the same. Every family had faced loss at some point, whether it was a parent, a sibling, a child, or a friend. Death, she realized, was a universal part of life. No one was exempt from it. As the day wore on, Kisa Gotami grew weary. She knocked on door after door, but everywhere she went, she found the same answer. Death had touched every household. Slowly, the truth began to sink in. The pain she felt was not unique to her. It was a sorrow shared by all beings. Death, she realized, was an inevitable part of life, and no one could escape its reach. Kisa Gotami returned to the Buddha, her arms empty, but her heart a little lighter. She knelt before him and spoke, her voice soft but resolute. "I could not find a mustard seed from a home untouched by death. I now understand that my grief is not mine alone. Everyone faces loss." The Buddha nodded, his eyes filled with compassion. "Kisa Gotami, you have learned an important lesson today. Death is a part of life, and clinging to what is past only causes suffering. The path to peace lies in understanding the impermanence of all things. When we let go of our attachments, we can find freedom from suffering." With the Buddha's words, Kisa Gotami's heart began to heal. She buried her son's body with dignity, accepting that his life had ended. Her grief, though still present, no longer consumed her. She had learned the hard truth of life's impermanence, and through that understanding, she began to find peace. Kisa Gotami's story is a timeless lesson in the nature of suffering, loss, and compassion. The Buddha's teaching, while simple, offered her the wisdom she needed to heal. His task of finding a mustard seed was not about magic or miracles. It was about helping her realize that death is a part of the human experience, and that through accepting this truth, she could begin to free herself from the suffering caused by her attachments. After her son's burial, Kisa Gotami continued to seek the Buddha's teachings. She became a devoted follower, meditating on the impermanence of all things. Over time, she grew in wisdom and compassion, her grief transforming into a deep understanding of the nature of life. One day, as she sat by the riverbank, watching the water flow endlessly by, Kisa Gotami reflected on the impermanence of all things. The river, she realized, was a perfect metaphor for life, constantly moving, always changing, never the same from one moment to the next. Just as the water flowed downstream carrying with it leaves, twigs, and other debris, so too did life carry people through experiences of joy and sorrow, gain and loss. Kisa Gotami understood now that trying to hold on to the past was like trying to grasp the water in the river. It was impossible. Life, like the river, was constantly moving forward, and to find peace, one had to flow with it, not fight against it. With this realization, Kisa Gotami felt a profound sense of inner calm. She had learned to let go of her attachments, not just to her son, but to all things in life. She no longer clung to the illusion of permanence, and in doing so, she found a deep well of compassion within herself. She saw that all beings were caught in the same cycle of life and death, and her heart opened to the suffering of others. As the years passed, Kisa Gotami became a revered teacher, sharing the Buddha's wisdom with others who were suffering. She would often tell the story of her search for the mustard seed, explaining how that simple task had led her to a profound understanding of the impermanence of life. Her compassion touched many hearts, and her wisdom guided countless others on their own journeys of healing and self-discovery. In the end, Kisa Gotami's story reminds us all of the universality of suffering and the healing power of compassion. Her journey from grief to acceptance teaches that while loss is inevitable, we can find peace by letting go of our attachments and embracing the ever-changing nature of life. Through this, we can discover a deeper connection to the world around us and cultivate compassion for ourselves and others, as we all walk the same path of life, love, loss, and ultimately, peace.